What's going on, guys? It is Ghosty Russ coming at you with another video, and today I am joined by one of my all-time favorite content creators and horror hosts, Dr. Gangrene. How are you doing today, Dr. Gangrene?
Great, man. Good to see you.
Good to see you. Thank you again for joining me today and giving me the chance to ask you a few questions. Super excited to do this. I think it's going to be pretty interesting.
Glad to do it. Thanks for the invite.
So, first off, I just want to ask, where did the name Dr. Gangrene come from?
So yeah, it's kind of funny. Dr. Gangrene came from the TV show ER because I work in a hospital and ER was super popular at that time.
Yeah.
And I was getting stopped in the halls literally by people saying, "Hey, you look like that guy from ER." And that guy is Dr. Green, played
Oh,
by
okay.
Anthony Edwards. And so, as you know, Dr. Gangrene's kind of a play on words of Dr. Green. It's kind of a takeoff of that. So also it was a good name because it's kind of like a twisted medical professional, whereas Dr. Gangrene, of course, is this mad, crazy doctor. So it all just worked.
That's awesome. That's a really good story. I like the ER reference there. I didn't even
Right.
think it didn't even cross my mind.
Yeah.
So I know that you started off doing comics, if I'm correct, starting with Out of the Cellar
Right.
comics and then the later volunteer comics. What was the inspiration to get into doing those types of comics? They were horror related. Um, so what was that inspiration behind doing that?
I've always been into horror stuff since I was a kid. And so when Chuck Angel and my partner on the show, or in the comics, who later I started the TV show with, when we decided to get into comic books, um, and work together on publishing some stuff. I mean, horror was just, I don't know, just what we gravitated to naturally. I mean, we did a little bit of superhero stuff too, but I mean, more than anything else, it was just focusing on horror from day one. It's just, I was into it. He's always been into it as well, I think. And yeah, I mean, it's just
Oh,
natural.
I definitely feel that. I got a lot of friends. I'm in the horror mask collecting community, so definitely got a lot of friends that are, the same. We've just always been into it, so we've done a few videos and things together. So it's always
Yeah,
fun to do that with somebody that has similar interests.
that's cool. My son just bought a couple of horror monster masks
That is
this
awesome.
week, as a matter of fact. Yeah.
That is so
Yeah,
great.
Creature from the Black Lagoon and Wolfman mask.
That is awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah, I've got a few over here. I don't know if you can see them very
yeah,
well.
yeah.
Pretty cool things. So, what was the transition from going to the comics into later doing the becoming the horror host? What was that kind of transition like?
That transition happened. Well, first off, I was getting a little burned out at the time because I mean, working in comics is a lot of work, and my hats off to people that do it full time because um, panel to panel art, it takes so much, butt and seat time sitting there drawing every panel. I mean, every panel is a work of art, whereas, which is a piece of a bigger piece of art, being the
Yeah,
whole page, which is piece of a bigger piece of art, the sequential storytelling of an entire issue. So anyway, I just, um, I was just getting a little burned out with it, but more than anything else, my son was born at that time, and being a new parent. Well, I already had a son and a stepson, and um, at that time, but when my new son was born, my new baby, I just didn't have time for it. So I just
understandable.
stopped, took some time off, spent a year and a half just, enjoying being a new parent, or taking care of all the things that come with being a new parent. And then eventually we moved out here to Hendersonville, and that's when we started the new show, because I met a guy that had a cable access show,
Oh, that's
and
awesome.
he lived, well, we started watching him on TV, and then I found out he lived right around the block. I had no idea, but it was just like, you know same, just up the road a little ways, and first road, second road on the right, up a few houses. I was like, oh really? So we became friends and got to talking, and I was asking him a lot of questions about it, and he said, you should start your own show, Larry. I think you'd be good at it.
That
And at
is
the time, I really did not think that I would be interested in that. But the more I thought about it, I was kind of like, yeah, I'll give this a try.
That is awesome. So I know for me, I can pinpoint the moment as a child that I kind of got into horror related things. I remember being really young and on TV around Halloween. They were playing Nightmare on Elm Street, and I just remember being with my family, and they were like, "Well, look at this. See if this is scary." And I fell in love. Is there a moment like that for you where you can pinpoint when you got into horror?
Not a specific moment. As far back as I can remember, um, the pretty much the earliest things I can remember getting into are afternoons. I would come home from school. There would be monster movies sometimes playing on the show called The Big Show in Nashville, and I would watch the Universal classics there. Um, it is no one particular thing. It's just always, always
Always been
being
there.
just into it as much. I mean that, and Munsters and Adams Family and reruns, and we're talking early '70s here, so it was a steady diet of Munsters, Adams Family, and and Universal Monsters in the
That is
afternoons. Yeah,
that is awesome. My dad grew up around the same time in here in Tennessee, and he bought the collections and would show me a lot of Adam's Family, Monsters. So I grew up and kind of whenever I was still a little too young to enjoy the more gory Halloween in horror movies, he would show me those, and that kind of also sparked that interest because it was just spooky and it was fun and it was just a cool thing to be to watch
yeah.
as a kid. And so growing up, you said that you watched all that. What were some of your biggest influences in becoming a horror host?
I would say for that, Sir Cecil Creep first and foremost. He was on the air from '70 to '73, so I was really a little young to watch it because I was 4. Show started, and well, in 1970 I would have been 3, and then in September would have turned 4. So 3 to 4 years old, that's too young, really. And so about 6 years, so 3 to 6, 4 to 7 range. It's a little young to watch it. My parents really weren't. My mom weren't like, no, but I remember seeing the promos on TV. I remember being really intrigued with him, and I remember meeting him at a Boy Scout event, a Cub Scout event. They had a event where he came out and he met everybody, and he handed out patches that say Sir Cecil's Ghoul Patrol on them. Which lab coat's in the other room. I've got it sewn on the jacket of my lab coat, on the breast pocket there.
That
So
is amazing.
just
Yeah.
as a tribute to him. He's one of so for sure Sir Cecil Creep, and but then of course all the monster movies Saturday afternoons and weekday afternoons both was a huge influence. And then I guess as far as hosts, I didn't really see any other hosts except for like Elvira later in the '80s. Sir Cecil came back in the '80s, but I really didn't see that second run of his stuff until some episodes years later.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think as far as the host stuff, that stuff, and then sort of Vincent Price, I think, is sort of his House on Haunted Hill. I think always kind of struck me as an influence, and also I think the host bit at the beginning of Alice Cooper's Welcome to My Nightmare
Oh
also
yes.
was because I remember when I discovered Alice Cooper, it was just mind blowing. I was like, "Are you kidding me? This exists? I thought it was the coolest thing I'd ever heard, and I really kind of still do."
Oh, Alice Cooper is definitely a classic. I have multiple albums on my playlist constantly playing, so definitely has that kind of vibe with the whole old school horror kind of feel to it. And as you mentioned, Sir Cecil Creep, my dad showed me a lot of Sir Cecil Creep, tapes and videos and things over the years. Do you think that horror hosts played a bigger role than in horror than it seems that they're giving credit for? Like, do you think they played a bigger role and people are kind of not giving them as much credit?
I think they played a big part. I think there's a kind of a renaissance of people that are appreciating them today. So I can't really say that they're underappreciated because I think it's coming back full circle now. I think for a while, but I really think now with the resurgence of Svengoolie having a national show and Joe Bob Briggs being on Shutter,
Oh yes.
Elvira being as big as she is, she's a household name. Whenever I need to explain what a horror host is, somebody that doesn't know, I'll mention Elvira's name and they get it just like that. So
Instantly.
I think for a while I think that was true, but I think it's coming. I think it's starting to come full circle, even though it still is honestly a very niche thing.
Yeah. Well, I definitely appreciate that insight because I definitely want to kind of morph my persona on YouTube into more of a horror host type character. So, is there any advice that you would give someone like me who wants to do that and to kind of take on a horror host type persona?
Yeah, the thing I always tell people, because I do get asked that fairly frequently, what I tell people is I say, do the kind of show that you would want to watch. Okay. So
Yeah.
think about what it is that you like to see in a horror house show and do that because you're going to be spending a lot of time, you know, writing, creating, editing, and
Oh yeah.
living with this. So you want to do something that you like. And in the when it all comes together, uh, you want a product that you're proud of and that you want to be able to sit down and watch yourself. And if you're not happy with it, nobody else is going to be. So do something you would want to watch, and I think you'll be happy with it. And even if it doesn't take off, at least you've done what you want to do. If that
Very
makes any
true.
sense.
Very true. I definitely appreciate the advice, and anyone watching who is also asking the similar question, I'm sure they would definitely appreciate that advice. I guess last question here. What would you say are some of your top horror movies?
Oh, well, anything with Vincent Price. I'm a huge Vincent Price fan, but even of his stuff, my favorites would be Theater of Blood, House of Haunted Hill. Well, both the William Castle stuff, the Tingler, Witchfinder General. You can't Last Man on Earth. You can't go wrong with any of that. Dr. Fives, the Abominable Dr. Fives, and then Night of the Living Dead. Um, Big fan of Night of the Demon, Curse of the Demon. Great. I think it's one of the best horror movies of all time. I love The Exorcist. I think William Friedkin is a genius. I love his horror stuff. I love his non-horror stuff too. I think he's a very under. I think people talk a lot about the greatest horror directors of all time, and you hear a lot of talk about John Carpenter and Wes Craven and George Romero, and rightly so, and all that. But Friedkin kind of gets left out of the conversation a lot. But I think he definitely is right up there among the best that deserves to be talked about more.
For
I
sure.
love some good bad '80s movies too. When I
Oh.
say bad, I mean, let's say, well, I do love a good bad movie, but, but let's say some of the movies that might be considered a little more minor classics. I love the Monster Club with
Uh-huh.
Vincent Price. It's one of my very favorite horror anthologies, and horror anthologies in general. That's my favorite genre, and so all the Amicus stuff, the House that Dripped Blood, uh, Asylum, Dr. Terror's House of Horrors, Creep Show. Creep Show in the '80s. That's not Amicus, but Tales from the Crypt and Vault of Horror. All of those anthologies. It's all my
Oh,
favorite stuff.
they're definitely amazing. Tales from the Crypt and Creep Show. I love those. My dad showed me those as growing up, and those definitely became some of my favorites as well. Um, so I guess that wraps up the interview. It was short and sweet, but I definitely appreciate you doing it. Would you like to tell the viewers where they can find you?
Sure. First off, thanks for having me on as a guest. I appreciate it. You can find my show Saturdays at 9 p.m. Central. It airs if you're in the Nashville area on Comcast, Comcast Arts Channel 9. So Channel 9 on Comcast in the Nashville area. Outside of the Nashville area, people can watch. If you have a Roku, you can watch on the NECAT Roku channel. Just search for NECAT and it's on the Arts link. They have 3 channels. They have the Arts, the Access Channel 19, and then the Education. But just search for the Arts. And again, it comes on at 9 o'clock. Or they can watch on the NECAT website, which is necatnetwork.org. And then you just click the Watch TV link. And actually, you can go back. All the shows are archived there as well. So you can watch them on demand if you go to the Watch TV link and then just click the calendar, and you can just select that what date you want to watch and scroll down to 9 o'clock at night and
Awesome.
watch them all on demand there too.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much, Dr.
Right.
Gangrene. Had a great time. Hopefully, since we're both in Tennessee, hopefully I get the pleasure of meeting you in person someday. I think that would
Absolutely.
be a great time.
Sounds good.
All right.
Look
Thank
forward to
you.
it. All right, buddy. See you.